The church smelled like old wood and too much perfume. My father's funeral had dragged out longer than anyone expected, and by the time we got back to my mother's house in Albany, everyone was exhausted. Family I hadn't seen in years was still hanging around, pretending they cared, picking at casseroles that had been reheated 3 times already. I sat in the corner, still in uniform, not because I wanted to show off, but because I had flown straight from Fort Bragg and hadn't had time to change. My younger sister, Megan, was glowing like she'd just won a pageant. She had been circling the room, whispering into people's ears, making sure everyone knew how she was handling everything. She had that smug look she'd worn since we were kids, the one that said she thought the world owed her something. I ignored it, at least until the lawyer showed up. Robert Chen was an old friend of my dad's. He walked in with a briefcase that probably held the last bombshells my father had left behind. Everyone gathered around the dining table. The air felt heavier than at the funeral. This wasn't about grief anymore. This was about money, property, and who was about to get screwed over. Robert started reading. Megan was practically bouncing in her chair like a kid waiting for candy. My mom, Helen, sat stiff as a board, her hands folded so tight I thought she'd snap her fingers off. Then came the words that made Megan's smile stretch even wider. To my daughter Megan, I leave the Miami apartment and a minority share in Whitmore Construction. She nodded like it was just confirmation of what she already knew. Miami, a luxury condo with a view of Biscayne Bay, worth millions, the kind of place Megan could post about on Instagram until her followers got nauseous. Then Robert turned the page. To my daughter Hannah, I leave the family cabin and the surrounding 200 acres of land in the Adirondacks. For a second, the room went quiet. A cabin? My father had left Megan the penthouse lifestyle and handed me an old shack in the woods. I kept my face blank. I had learned that skill in the army: never let anyone see your reaction. But Megan wasn't about to let it go. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and smirked at me. A cabin? Fits you perfectly, you stinking woman. She didn't whisper. She wanted everyone to hear. Some people gasped. My mom looked down at the table, refusing to make eye contact. Robert shifted uncomfortably, but kept reading, like pretending it didn't happen would make it go away. I clenched my jaw. It wasn't the insult that got me. I'd been called worse in Afghanistan by people who wanted me dead. It was the fact that my own sister, sitting across from me in our father's house, thought it was okay to spit on me like that in front of everyone. Megan laughed under her breath, clearly enjoying herself. Come on, Hannah. You live out of a duffel bag most of the year anyway. That shack is perfect for you. Rustic, simple, nothing fancy. No one will even notice if you disappear up there. I looked at my mom. She didn't say a word. No defense. No pushback. Just silence. Like she was scared to upset Megan. That silence cut deeper than the insult. Robert closed the folder and cleared his throat. That concludes the reading of the will. Your father's wishes are legally binding. Megan shot her hand in the air like she'd just won bingo. Great. I'll start looking at management options for the Miami property this week. I know some people at Summit Realty who can help. She glanced at me and smirked again. Hope you like chopping firewood. Lon. I wanted to tell her where to shove her real estate contacts, but instead I grabbed my jacket and stood up. Years in the army had taught me when to fight and when to walk away. Right then, walking away was the smarter move. The problem was, Megan wasn't done. She followed me to the hallway, her heels clicking like gunshots against the hardwood floor. Don't be mad, Hannah. It's not like you ever cared about this family anyway. Always off playing soldier while I took care of things here. I spun around and faced her. You mean you took care of yourself? Dad built this family, you just took advantage of it. Her eyes narrowed, but her smile never faded. And now I get the reward. Enjoy your little shack in the woods. Maybe you can use it for target practice. I walked out the front door without another word. My bags were already packed upstairs, but I wasn't going back in there to grab them while she was circling like a vulture. I'd pick them up later. Right then, I needed to breathe before I said something that would escalate into a full-on war in front of the extended family. The cold Albany air slapped me in the face as I stepped onto the porch. It felt better than sitting inside that suffocating house where my father's memory was being carved up into assets and insults. I stood there for a long minute, listening to the muffled voices inside. Megan's laughter carried through the walls. I thought about my father. He had served too, years before I was born. He knew what it meant to stand by your people, to never leave anyone behind. And yet somehow, here I was left behind by my own family, treated like the unwanted baggage no one wanted to claim. When my mom finally came to the doorway, she didn't look at me. She just wrapped her sweater tighter around herself and said, "Megan didn't mean it. She's under a lot of stress." I almost laughed. Stress? She just inherited a condo worth $2 million. What's stressful about that? Mom flinched but didn't respond. She stepped back inside without another word, leaving me on the porch. That silence spoke louder than anything. It told me exactly where she stood. Not with me. Not with the daughter who had spent years overseas, eating dust and carrying the Whitmore name into combat zones. She stood with Megan, the daughter who never sacrificed a damn thing. I walked down the steps, hands shoved deep in my coat pockets. The street was lined with cars, headlights, glowing in the dusk. People were leaving, talking about dinner plans, weekend trips, anything but the family drama they had just witnessed. One of my uncles gave me a pitying smile as he passed. "Sorry, kiddo. Rough day, huh?" I nodded but didn't stop. Rough day didn't even begin to cover it. By the time I reached my car, my jaw ached from clenching it so tight. I slid into the driver's seat and stared at the steering wheel, my father's words echoing in my head from years ago. "You're tougher than you think, Hannah. Never let anyone decide your worth." I started the engine, the sound loud in the quiet street. Megan's laughter still floated through the walls of the house as I pulled away. The highway stretched ahead in the dark, and the only sound inside my car was the steady hum of the engine. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, Megan's name flashing across the screen. I didn't bother picking up. Whatever she had to say would be another dig, another reminder that in her eyes I was the expendable one. I let it go to voicemail. By the time I pulled into a rest stop, the weight of the day finally hit me. I leaned back in the seat, staring at the roof of the car. I had been through firefights in Afghanistan that rattled me less than my sister's words at that table. That's the difference with family. They know exactly where to hit you, and they don't miss. When I got back on the road, the next call came from my mom. For a second, I considered answering, but I knew how it would go. She would defend Megan, say she didn't mean it, then slip in a gentle suggestion that maybe I should just let Megan handle things. It wasn't worth hearing. I let that one go to voicemail too. Hours later, I was back at my tiny apartment near base. The place was sterile, barely lived in, because I was rarely there long enough to make it feel like home. I dropped my bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. It was quiet, too quiet. I thought about calling one of the guys from my unit, but what was I supposed to say? "Hey, you ever get called a stinking woman by your sister during a will reading?" Yeah, that would go over well. The next morning, my mom showed up at my door without warning. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept, but she still had that polished appearance. She always carried hair sprayed into place, neat pearl earrings. She walked in without waiting for me to invite her. "Hannah," she started, setting her purse on the table. "Megan feels terrible about what she said." I laughed. "She feels terrible? Or you feel terrible about how it looked in front of the family?" Her lips pressed into a line. "That's not fair. She's under stress. She's handling the estate. She inherited a penthouse, Mom. She's not exactly living under a bridge." My mother sighed and sat down. "You know what I mean. She has responsibilities. That condo isn't just for her. It's an investment, something she can manage for the family's future." There it was again, the word family being thrown around like it only applied to Megan. "And what about the cabin?" I asked. She hesitated. "It's out of the way, difficult to maintain. Maybe it would make sense if Megan handled that too. She has connections with real estate companies. She could make it valuable. You have your career in the army. You don't need to worry about property." I stared at her. "So let me get this straight. Dad left me something, and less than 24 hours later you're suggesting I hand it over to Megan?" She folded her hands in her lap, avoiding my eyes. "It would be simpler. She thinks of it as a family asset." I shook my head. "No, she thinks of it as hers. And apparently, so do you." Her face hardened. "Don't talk to me like that, Hannah. I'm trying to keep this family together." I stood up, my voice steady. "No, Mom. You're trying to keep Megan happy. Big difference." She flinched like I'd slapped her. After a beat, she picked up her purse and stood. "I won't argue with you. Just think about it. When the door closed behind her, I sat down again, hands shaking with anger. I had faced down arrogant officers, corrupt contractors, even men pointing rifles at me, but nothing compared to the sting of being dismissed by your own mother. The next week passed in a haze of work. Training schedules, supply checks, endless meetings. The army had a way of swallowing up your time, leaving little room for personal battles. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the sting didn't fade. Every night, when the lights went out, I saw Megan's smug face and heard her words. Then one evening, I got a text from her. Just checking in. How's life in your shack? I didn't respond. I deleted it and tossed my phone across the couch. She wasn't just rubbing salt in the wound, she was daring me to react. A few days later, Mom called again. This time, I picked up. Hannah, she said softly, Megan thinks you should stay at the cabin for a while. It would give everyone space. Things are tense right now. I almost laughed. Space? That's rich. She wants me out of the way, and you're helping her. That's not true, Mom insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. The cabin is yours legally. No one's taking it away. But Megan, she feels like you're holding on just to spite her. My jaw tightened. She insulted me, Mom. She humiliated me in front of you and everyone else, and now I'm the problem because I won't roll over and hand her everything? There was a pause. I don't want us to drift apart. Please, Hannah. At least go see the cabin. Stay a night. Clear your head. Maybe then you'll understand. Understand what? That my family had chosen Megan over me? That my inheritance was a joke in their eyes? I wanted to hang up, but I forced myself to breathe. Fine, I said. I'll go, but not for Megan, for Dad. The line went silent, then she whispered, Thank you, before hanging up. I sat there with the phone still in my hand, staring at the blank screen. For Dad. That was the only reason I'd do it. He had wanted me to have that cabin. Maybe he had a reason none of us saw. So I packed a bag. Just enough clothes, boots, and gear to get by for a few days. My army training had taught me how to live with less. A cabin in the mountains wouldn't scare me. What scared me was realizing that my own family saw me as disposable. The drive north took hours, the road winding through stretches of forest and small towns that looked half abandoned. With each mile, Albany faded behind me, and the thought of Megan's smirk grew more distant. By the time I saw the first signs for Lake George, the anger in my chest had cooled into something else: determination. When I finally turned onto the dirt road leading to the cabin, my headlights caught the outline of a sagging roof and shuttered windows. My heart tightened. This was it, my so-called worthless inheritance. I pulled up and killed the engine. The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed on your ears. I stepped out, boots crunching against gravel, and looked at the dark silhouette of the cabin. It wasn't much to look at, but it was mine. The porch groaned under my boots as I climbed the steps, brushing leaves out of the way. The lock was old, but the key turned smoothly, which surprised me. For a second, I expected the place to smell like mildew and dead mice. Instead, the air hit me with pine wood, faint coffee, and leather. Not bad for a shack Megan thought was my destiny. I flicked the light switch by the door, half convinced it wouldn't work. A warm glow filled the small living room. Someone had been taking care of this place. The wood floors were polished, the furniture wasn't falling apart, and a neat stack of firewood leaned against the stone fireplace. I shut the door and leaned against it, wondering if Dad had arranged for someone to keep an eye on the cabin. My bag sat heavy at my feet, but what caught my attention was a framed photograph on the mantel. I stepped closer. It was Dad Young, barely 20, standing in front of this same cabin with an older woman I didn't recognize. On the back, written in his sharp handwriting, with Grandma Rose, 1962, the place where everything began. Grandma Rose? Dad had never mentioned a Rose. He always said his parents died young, no family left. I studied the woman's face. She had kind eyes, and a look that suggested she wasn't someone you messed with. For a second, I almost felt like she was looking right back at me. A knock on the door made me jump. My hand instinctively reached for where my sidearm usually was before I remembered I wasn't on duty. I peered through the window. An older man stood on the porch, holding a casserole dish. Mrs. Whitmore? He called out. I opened the door cautiously. It's Captain Whitmore. Who are you? He gave a warm smile. Name's Jack Reynolds. I live 2 cabins down. Marine Corps, retired. Your father asked me to check in when the time came. He said you might need a friend out here. Marine Corps. That explained the straight posture and the haircut still sharp at 70. He held out the dish. Beef stew. Figured you'd be hungry after the drive. I hesitated, then took it. You knew my dad? Jack nodded. Knew him well enough. He came up here a week before he passed. Spent 3 days organizing things. Told me his daughter might show up one day looking like the world had turned on her. Said I should remind you that sometimes the most valuable treasures are hidden in unexpected places. His words, not mine. My throat tightened. He really said that? Clear as day, Jack replied. Oh, and he said you should check under the kitchen floorboard when you're ready. He tipped his cap and started down the steps before I could ask another question. I shut the door, the stew heavy in my hands, and stood there in silence. Dad had known this was coming. He'd prepared for it. And now here I was, holding his message like some coded mission brief. I set the stew on the counter and dropped to my knees by the kitchen table. The boards were old pine, scuffed from decades of boots and chairs. Running my hand along the floor, I found one plank that shifted slightly. My heart raced. I pried it up with a pocket knife, and sure enough, there was a metal box wrapped in oilcloth. I carried it to the table, wiped the dust off, and opened it. Inside were papers, photographs, and a letter addressed to me in Dad's handwriting. But what stopped me cold was the geological survey tucked underneath. My military training had me scanning numbers and summaries fast. Words jumped out. Granite, feldspar, high yield, estimated commercial value substantial. Megan thought she'd stuck me with worthless wood and creaky floors. What I actually had was land sitting on top of serious mineral deposits. I sat down hard, staring at the paper. Dad hadn't left me scraps. He'd left me something valuable. Something he didn't trust Megan with. Hands shaking. I opened the letter. My dearest Hannah, if you're reading this, I was right about Megan. I pray I'm wrong, but I saw the signs. The way she looks at our home like it's hers. The way she dismisses you when she thinks I'm not listening. I need you to know about Rose. She wasn't my blood grandmother, but she took me in after my parents died. This was her cabin, her land. She studied it her whole life. She knew it held resources but told me to protect it. She said one day, it might give my family what they truly needed. Security, independence, and strength. Now it's your turn. I set the letter down, tears blurring the words. Dad had trusted me, not Megan. He had seen something in me she never could. I pushed the letter aside and picked up one of the old photos. Dad stood next to Rose, and behind them, I spotted survey markers in the ground. She'd known. She had left all this to him, and now it was mine. My phone buzzed on the table. Megan. Of course. I didn't answer, but the text lit up the screen. How's the shack, Hannah? Still smell like mold? I stared at it and almost laughed. If only she knew. The night wore on as I went through the box. Land deeds, bank statements, Dad's notes. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just property. It was leverage. It was power. And I was the one holding it. By midnight, I finally ate the stew. It was damn good. Marine good. I sat there at the table, staring at the documents, the ring of rose glinting in one of the photos, and thought about what Megan would say if she knew. She'd call me unworthy. She'd try to take it. And for the first time all week, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt since leaving Afghanistan anticipation before a fight. I cleaned up, stacked the papers neatly, and locked the box back under the floorboard. Then, I stretched out on the couch, listening to the quiet of the woods outside. No sirens, no hum of city traffic, just the creak of the cabins settling into the night. As I drifted toward sleep, one thought cut through the haze. Dad had left me exactly what I needed. Not just land, not just minerals, but a chance to finally stand on my own. Sunlight filtered through the cabin's thin curtains, and for the first time in weeks, I woke up without an alarm or the sound of boots stomping outside the barracks. My back ached from the couch, but the smell of pine and the quiet of the lake made it tolerable. I sat up, rubbed my face, and looked toward the kitchen table. The letter from Dad lay right where I'd left it, waiting. I poured myself instant coffee from the dusty tin I found in the cabinet, then sat down and unfolded the rest of the letter. Hannah, I left you the cabin for a reason. Megan would only see money in it, but you'll see what it really means. Rose believed in resilience. She believed women had to fight twice as hard to be respected, and she made me promise to pass that fight down. If you're holding this letter, then I trust you to keep that promise. The army taught you discipline and courage, but this land will give you independence. Don't sell it. Protect it. Build something with it. I've already spoken with Robert Chen, an attorney I trust. He has documents that prove your rights. Call him when you're ready. Dad's handwriting wavered toward the end, but his message was clear. He didn't want Megan touching this land. He wanted me to do something with it. I sat back, sipping coffee, staring at the stack of deeds and surveys. Granite, feldspar, and even notes about lithium deposits. That was no small deal in today's market. Dad hadn't just left me property, he'd left me leverage Megan would kill for. A knock on the door broke my focus. I stood and opened it cautiously. Jack Reynolds was back, holding a tool belt this time. "Morning, Captain," he said. "Figured you'd need some basics if you're staying a while. Hammer, nails, flashlight, nothing fancy, but it'll keep the place standing." "Thanks," I said, stepping aside. "Come on in." Jack placed the belt on the counter and gave the cabin a quick scan, the way vets do when they walk into a new space, checking exits, windows, angles. Habit dies hard. "Your dad told me not to spill too much," he said, lowering himself into a chair. "But he wanted you to know this land's not just a cabin by the lake. He said it could change your future if you handle it right." I nodded. I found the box and the survey. "End of place." Jack gave a slow grin. "Good. Then you already know. Most people out here think this land's just pretty scenery, but your grandma rose hell. She was smarter than the geologists I worked with overseas. She knew exactly what was under our boots." "You knew Rose?" I asked, surprised. He chuckled. "Not personally. She died before I moved here. But everyone in these parts knows the stories. Tough as nails. The kind of woman who could argue a county commissioner under the table and still bake a pie before sundown. She passed that toughness to your dad. And now, I guess, to you." I leaned forward. "Jack, tell me straight. If Megan finds out about what's under this land, how bad could this get?" He didn't hesitate. "Bad. Families tear themselves apart over less. Developers will swarm like vultures if they sniff money here. You'll need a good lawyer and thicker skin than you already have." "That." I almost laughed. "Thicker than the army gave me?" "Blood cuts deeper than bullets," he said simply. That stuck with me. After he left, I spent hours going through more papers. Maps with handwritten notes, old photos of Rose with survey equipment, even a contract draft between Dad and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. He must have been preparing something before he died. By afternoon, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Megan calling. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Well," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "How's our little shack treating you? Drafty? Falling apart?" "It's fine," I said flatly. She gave a mocking laugh. "Of course it's fine for you. Fits you perfectly isolated, simple, nothing special." I gripped the phone tighter. "Megan, what do you want?" "I was just thinking," she said casually. "Mom and I could help you manage the property. You don't have time for this. With your deployments and all, it'd make sense for me to handle it. You'd still get visits, of course. Holidays, maybe. Doesn't that sound easier?" I let silence hang for a beat. "No. Dad left it to me. I'll handle it." Her tone sharpened. "Don't be difficult, Hannah. You know you're not cut out for this kind of thing." I hung up before she could finish. My pulse was pounding, but deep down I felt something new resolve. That evening, I cooked the rest of Jack's stew and ate by the fire. The flames popped and crackled, and I thought about Dad's words. Build something with it. Megan would never understand that. She only saw money. But Dad wanted more. I pulled the letter out again and read the final lines. "Hannah, you've been underestimated your whole life. By teachers, by commanding officers, even by your own family. Don't waste this chance. Use it to prove them wrong. Use it to help others who've been pushed aside. That's Rose's legacy. That's your legacy now." The words burned into me. I wasn't just sitting on a pile of rocks. I was sitting on a mission. And unlike Megan, I didn't need a penthouse to feel powerful. I had something better proof that my father believed in me more than anyone else. As the fire died down and the cabin went quiet, I looked out the window toward the dark lake. My family thought they'd thrown me away. They had no idea I was just getting started. The next morning, the crunch of tires on gravel pulled me out of sleep. I pulled on a jacket and stepped onto the porch. A black SUV sat idling at the end of the drive. Two men in business, casual slacks, windbreakers, clipboards stood near the cabin, scanning the trees like they were surveying the land. "Can I help you?" I called, my voice sharper than I intended. One of them smiled too quickly. "Morning, ma'am. We're from Summit Realty Partners. Just checking out some property lines." Summit Realty Partners, Megan's company. My jaw tightened. "This property belongs to me. You got permission from who exactly?" The man shifted his weight. "We were told by your sister it was a family holding. Just preliminary inspection, nothing formal." I crossed my arms. "Then you can preliminarily get off my land before I call the sheriff." They exchanged a glance, then nodded, retreating toward the SUV without another word. The engine revved, and within seconds they were gone, leaving behind a churn of dust and the confirmation of what I already suspected: Megan wasn't wasting time. I went back inside and slammed the door harder than I meant to. My pulse hammered in my ears. She had sent people here, to my cabin, as if I were just a placeholder until she could move in her pawns. I grabbed my phone and dialed Mom. She answered on the second ring. "Hannah," she said, cautious. "Mom, did you know Megan sent realtors to my cabin this morning?" There was silence, then a sigh. "She just wants to make sure everything's in order. She thinks maybe the land could be developed." "Developed?" I snapped. "She doesn't own it. Dad left it to me. What part of that do you two not understand?" Her tone hardened. "You don't need to raise your voice. Megan is trying to help. You're a soldier, Hannah, not a landowner. She has the experience to manage this." I closed my eyes. "She doesn't want to manage it. She wants to steal it." "Don't be dramatic," Mom said flatly. "She's thinking of the family's future." There it was again, the family card, always stacked in Megan's favor. I ended the call before the anger boiling in my chest came out in words I couldn't take back. By midday, I needed air. I took a walk down the dirt road, the chill biting through my jacket. The woods were still, the kind of quiet that sharpens every sound. Half a mile down, I found fresh tire tracks cutting into the brush near the property line. Someone had driven off-road to get closer. I crouched, tracing the ruts with my finger. Wide spacing, heavy tread, probably the same SUV. They hadn't just stopped by. They'd been poking around. When I got back, Jack was stacking firewood by his porch. "You've got company snooping?" he asked, like he already knew the answer. "Summit Realty," I said, dropping my hands into my pockets. He let out a low whistle. "That's Megan's bunch, right?" "Yeah. She sent them here like she owns the place." Jack shook his head. "Seen it before. Family fights over land get uglier than combat zones. You'll want everything locked tight with a lawyer. I've got a name, Robert Chen. Dad set it up. I'll call him tomorrow." "Good," Jack said. "And Hannah, don't let them see you rattled. Greedy folks smell fear like wolves." That night, as the fire burned low, I thought about his words. Wolves. That's exactly what Megan was unleashing. The next day, I drove into town and found a small diner with decent Wi-Fi. Over eggs and coffee, I drafted an email to Robert Chen's office. Within an hour, I had a reply. He could meet me Friday. Relief settled in, knowing Dad had set up a legal safety net before he died. Back at the cabin, I found fresh footprints by the dock. My stomach dropped. Someone else had been here while I was gone. I scanned the ground, 3 distinct sets of boot prints, leading from the road straight to the back porch. Inside, nothing seemed touched. Still, I walked each room carefully, instincts from years of deployment kicking in. Cleared corners, checked windows, no signs of forced entry. But the fact that strangers had come this close was enough. That evening, Mom called again. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted to hear what excuse she had this time. "Hannah," she said, "you're making things worse. Megan feels like you're shutting her out." "She's breaking into my life, Mom. Literally. I had strangers walking my property lines this morning." "She's just trying to protect family interests," Mom insisted. "Family interests?" I snapped. "What about my interests? What about Dad's wishes? He trusted me with this, not her." The silence stretched, heavy. Finally, she said, "Megan is worried you'll ruin things out of spite." Ags. I laughed bitterly. Out of spite? She called me a stinking woman in front of you, and you sat there. And now you're siding with her. Tell me, Mom, when exactly did I stop being part of this family? Her voice faltered. That's not true, Hannah. Feels true. I hung up before she could respond. I paced the living room, anger pumping hot in my veins. Every call, every move Megan made was calculated to corner me. She had Mom on her side. She had money. And now she had her company sniffing around like they already owned the deed. But she didn't have me. And she didn't have Dad's letter. That night, I pulled the metal box out again, laying the documents across the table. Mineral surveys, legal deeds, contracts waiting to be finalized. Megan could play dirty, but this was proof. Hard evidence. If she wanted a fight, she was about to get one and I wasn't walking away. The wind picked up outside, rattling the shutters. I locked the door and loaded the old hunting rifle Dad had left in the closet. Not because I planned to use it, but because it reminded me of something the Army drilled into me over and over. You don't leave yourself exposed. When the house was quiet again, I stood at the window looking out at the dark tree line. Somewhere out there, Megan's people were circling. But I wasn't going anywhere. The next morning, I drove into Albany with the documents tucked into my bag. The closer I got to the city, the tighter my grip on the steering wheel became. I wasn't nervous about courtrooms or lawyers. I'd stared down Taliban fighters in dusty alleys. But sitting across from legal sharks and greedy family, that was a new battlefield. Robert Chen's office was in a high-rise overlooking the Hudson. The receptionist greeted me like she'd been expecting me. And minutes later, I was in a glass-walled conference room. Robert walked in, mid-40 seconds, sharp suit, calm eyes that had probably seen their share of family meltdowns. "Captain Whitmore," he said, shaking my hand firmly, "your father spoke highly of you. He trusted you'd be the one to handle this." Hearing that steadied me. "He left me more than I realized," I said, sliding the metal box across the table. Robert opened it with practiced care, scanning documents quickly. He stopped at the geological survey, eyebrows lifting. "Well," he murmured, "your sister's in for a surprise. This isn't just a cabin. These mineral rights alone are worth tens of millions. Feldspar, granite, and—" he tapped the lithium report. "This could make you wealthier than any penthouse ever could." I leaned back, arms crossed. "Megan already sent her people snooping. She's trying to box me out." Robert nodded. "I suspected as much. That's why your father came to me. He knew Megan's greed would surface, and he wanted protections in place." He pulled out a thick folder and slid it toward me. "Here. Deeds, titles, mineral rights, all signed, notarized, and filed. You are the sole legal owner. No one can challenge that unless they want to burn through years in court and lose." The weight of those words settled like armor across my chest. For the first time since the funeral, I felt like the ground under me was solid. Robert studied me. "You've served your country. You understand discipline and patience. This is no different. You hold the advantage. Don't let them bait you into rash moves." I gave a short laugh. "That's Megan's specialty, baiting." He smiled. "Then you'll have to specialize in not biting." I left his office lighter than I'd walked in. Driving back toward the mountains, I kept thinking about Dad's words. Build something with it. Megan would sell everything to the highest bidder. I wanted something that lasted. When I pulled into the cabin's driveway, Jack was there chopping wood. He eyed the folder in my hands. "So? You bulletproof now?" "Pretty much," I said. "Dad set everything up. Megan's got no legal ground." Jack grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. "Good. Because those people came by again while you were gone. I told them to back off. Didn't like the look they gave me, though." "They'll be back," I said. "Megan doesn't quit." Jack nodded slowly. "Then don't you quit either." That night, I spread the documents on the table, studying every line until the words blurred. It felt like preparing for a mission. Supplies ready, objectives clear, threats identified. The Army had drilled me for combat zones, but the battlefield now was my own bloodline. The next day, I got an email from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. One of Dad's old contacts had confirmed the mineral survey, noting its strategic value. That phrase hit me differently. Strategic value wasn't just money. It meant potential contracts, government interest, leverage on a national scale. I stared at the screen, then at the quiet lake outside the window. Megan had no idea what she was circling. This wasn't just family property. It was a resource with the kind of weight politicians whispered about behind closed doors. By afternoon, my phone rang again. This time, I answered without checking the caller ID. "Hannah," Megan's voice snapped. "I heard you met with Dad's lawyer." I smirked. "News travels fast." "Who's feeding you, Mom?" "You're being unreasonable," she said sharply. "That land could be worth a fortune, and you don't know the first thing about handling it." "Funny," I shot back. "Because Dad thought I did. He trusted me, not you." Her tone dropped to a hiss. "If you think you can cut me out, you're dead wrong. This isn't over." I hung up, not because I was done, but because she didn't deserve more of my time. I stepped outside, the cool evening air hitting me like a splash of water. Jack was sitting on his porch, sipping something from a tin mug. "You look like someone just threatened to sue you," he called. I sat down on his steps. "Worse, someone threatened to be my sister." He chuckled. "Family'll cut you deeper than any knife." "Tell me about it," I muttered. Jack leaned forward. "You know what I learned in the Marines? You win fights before they start. Not by swinging first, but by being so damn prepared the other guy realizes he's already lost. You've got that chance now. Don't let her dictate the tempo." His words sank in. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was on a fence. Later that night, I wrote notes in a spiral notebook. Secure land, strengthen legal position, develop plan for future use. Don't let Megan define narrative. It felt like writing an ops order. Maybe that's what this really was, an operation, just with different weapons. The wind rattled the windows again, and I thought of Dad's voice telling me I was stronger than I believed. For years, Megan had defined me as the one in uniform who didn't understand real life. But standing here, with legal proof in my hands and a cabin that held more value than she could imagine, I realized she was the one who didn't get it. Real life wasn't about penthouses and showy wealth. It was about grit, survival, building something that mattered. I locked the documents back in the box, slid it under the floorboard, and sat by the fire. The logs hissed and cracked, filling the cabin with warmth. For the first time since Dad's funeral, I didn't feel like the discarded daughter. I felt like the one holding the line. And Megan, for all her smirks and insults, was about to learn the difference between greed and strength. The fire had burned down to glowing embers when my phone lit up again. This time it was Mom. Against better judgment, I answered. "Hannah," she said quietly. "Your sister is upset. She thinks you're being hostile." I let out a bitter laugh. "Hostile? She sent realtors to trespass on my land. She's lucky all I did was kick them off." "She just wants to make sure the property is handled responsibly," Mom replied, her tone clipped but careful. "Handled responsibly," I repeated. "By who, Mom? By the sister who called me a stinking woman in front of you? Or by the daughter Dad trusted enough to leave this cabin to?" Silence hung on the line. I could almost picture her tightening her grip on the phone, pearls gleaming at her neck like armor. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," she said finally. "Megan believes your father wanted this land managed for the family. She thinks—" "Stop," I cut in. "You don't get to rewrite Dad's wishes. He left this to me. Not her. Not you, me." Her voice rose, sharp as I'd ever heard it. "Don't talk to me that way. I'm your mother. I watched you run off to the army instead of staying close to home. I supported Megan while you were gone, and now you act like you're the victim." The words stung, but I didn't flinch. "You supported Megan because she gave you what you wanted, a daughter who stayed. I gave you something different. I gave you service, discipline, sacrifice, and you never once said you were proud of that." End of try. Her breathing hitched on the other end. "Hannah, that's not fair." "No," I said firmly. "What's not fair is you sitting silent while Megan humiliated me. What's not fair is you defending her greed instead of respecting Dad's decision." The line went dead. She'd hung up. I sat there in the dim light, phone heavy in my hand. The truth was laid bare. Mom wasn't neutral. She was with Megan. The next day, I decided to face it head on. I drove back to Albany, to the family home. Pulling up, I saw Megan's Lexus in the driveway, gleaming like a trophy. When I stepped inside, both of them were waiting in the dining room. Mom sat stiff-backed at the head of the table, Megan lounging beside her with a glass of white wine, confidence dripping from every movement. "Hannah," Mom said coolly, "we need to talk." I dropped my keys on the counter. Funny, that's exactly how Dad's will meeting started. Can't wait to hear how this one ends. Megan smirked. "Still the sarcastic soldier? Dad spoiled you, leaving you that shack. You don't have the faintest clue what it's worth." "Oh, I have a pretty good idea," I shot back. Her eyes narrowed. "Then you understand why it should be handled by someone with experience. I've already had Summit Realty draft potential buyers. The offers will be substantial." "You went behind my back to appraise my property?" I asked, my voice rising. "Our property," she corrected smoothly. I slammed my hand on the table. "No, mine. Dad's will was clear. He left the cabin and the land to me. End of story." Mom's voice cut through icy. "Don't raise your voice in my house." I turned on her. "Your house? Or Megan's? Hard to tell these days." Megan set her glass down, smirking. "You think a few legal papers make you untouchable? Courts can be persuaded, judges can be convinced. And you, with your military schedule, you don't have the time or stability to fight this battle." "Oh," I leaned across the table. "Try me." For a moment, the mask slipped. Megan's smirk faltered, her eyes flashing with anger. Then she straightened, smooth again. "This attitude won't end well for you." "Neither will underestimating me," I said. The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. Mom rose abruptly. "Enough. I won't watch my daughters destroy each other." "Then stop picking sides," I said, locking eyes with her. But her silence was answer enough. I grabbed my jacket and walked out. The cold air outside felt cleaner than the stifling room I'd just left. On the drive back, my thoughts spiraled. Megan was escalating, snooping, appraising, threatening, and Mom was her shield. It was 2 against 1, and I was done playing defense. When I got back to the cabin, Jack was waiting on the porch. He looked at me the way only another veteran can look, reading tension in posture, in clenched fists, in eyes that won't rest. "You saw them," he said, not even asking. I nodded. "They're not backing down." He tossed me a beer. "Neither are you." We sat in silence, sipping. "Finally," I said. "Funny thing about combat zones, you expect the enemy. Family's different, hits harder." Jack nodded slowly. "That's because in combat, you know where the line island with family, the line keeps moving." The beer was cold, the air colder, but I felt a fire inside me that no weather could put out. Megan wanted to push. Mom wanted me silent. But I'd been trained for worse. Before turning in that night, I walked down to the dock. The lake reflected the moon, calm and steady. I thought of Dad, his trust, his letter, his warning. I whispered into the night, "I won't let them take this from me." And in that moment, I believed it. The next morning, I rolled up my sleeves and decided the cabin wasn't going to look like a forgotten relic anymore. If Megan wanted to treat it like trash, I'd turn it into something worth fighting for. First, I hauled out the broken chairs stacked in the corner. Then I scrubbed counters, swept floors, and cleared spiderwebs from the rafters. The army had taught me to turn chaos into order, and within a few hours, the place looked less like a hand-me-down and more like a home. When Jack stopped by, he whistled low. "Looks like you're running a field exercise in here, Aller." "Just bringing it up to standard," I said, dropping the mop into the bucket. He nodded, setting down a toolbox. "Thought you might need this. Hammer, screws, some paint. Place has good bones, it just needs someone who gives a damn." We worked side by side most of the afternoon. Jack replaced a loose porch board while I patched a drafty window. The rhythm of labor calmed me. Each nail driven, each board scrubbed clean, felt like reclaiming something Megan couldn't touch. Later, when the sun dipped behind the trees, we sat on the porch steps with 2 cold beers. "You ever think about what you want this place to be?" Jack asked. I looked out at the lake. Not just a cabin, not just land, something bigger, something Dad hinted at in his letter. He tilted his head. "Like what?" I hesitated, then said it aloud for the first time. "A foundation, for veterans, for women who get pushed aside by their families, a place to rebuild." Jack studied me for a long moment, then smiled. "That's one hell of an objective, Captain." It's not just about revenge, I said. It's about proving that what Megan called worthless can change lives. Jack raised his bottle. Then you build it. And don't let anyone stop you. That night, I sat at the table drafting ideas in a notebook. I listed names: Whitmore Veterans and Women Foundation. I wrote goals: transitional housing, job training, counseling. I had no funding yet, but I had land, legal proof, and minerals underfoot worth more than Megan's condo 100 times over. The next day, I drove into town for supplies: paint, lumber, hardware. At the register, the clerk asked, "Fixing up the Whitmore place?" "Yeah," I said. "Good. Folks around here always said that cabin deserved better." His casual words stuck with me all afternoon. Deserved better, that's exactly what Dad must have thought. Back at the cabin, I painted the front door a fresh coat of deep green. It gleamed in the afternoon sun, bold and solid. With every stroke, I felt more ownership, more determination. When I took a break, I pulled out Dad's box again. Tucked inside was another envelope, smaller, marked for Hannah's eyes only. I opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note. "If Megan pressures you, remember this. Integrity beats greed in the long game. But you'll need proof, allies, and a plan. Trust Chen. Trust yourself. And don't forget, strength runs deeper than blood." I folded it back slowly. Dad hadn't just trusted me. He'd prepared me for exactly what Megan was trying to do. By evening, Jack returned, carrying an old army cot. "Thought you might want something better than that couch." "Thanks," I said. "Feels like I'm back in a forward operating base." He grinned. "Difference is, here you've got choice. You get to build instead of just survive." As night fell, I cooked pasta on the stove and ate with the window open, listening to the steady lap of the lake. My body ached from scrubbing, painting, lifting, but it was a good ache. The kind that came from fighting for something real. After dinner, I sat down with my laptop and began drafting a proposal for the foundation. Simple bullet points: land use, community support, funding options. I wasn't sure how far I'd get, but writing it down made it tangible. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Against better judgment, I answered. "Hannah Whitmore?" A man's voice asked. "Yes. This is Summit Realty. Your sister asked us to extend a formal offer on the cabin and surrounding acreage. 7 figures, cash, clean deal." I let out a sharp laugh. "Tell Megan she can keep her cash. This land isn't for sale." "Think carefully," the man warned. "Offers like this don't come twice." Neither do sisters who betray you." I snapped and hung up. Anger surged, but it didn't shake me. It steeled me. Megan was playing her cards fast because she knew time wasn't on her side. Later, I stood on the dock under the stars. The water was still, reflecting the moon like glass. I thought of every soldier I'd served with who came home to nothing, of every woman I'd met who'd been told she was disposable. This land wasn't just my inheritance. It was my weapon, my shield, my chance to prove them all wrong. When I went back inside, I wrote the last line of my proposal in bold. "This foundation will stand as proof that strength, not greed, defines legacy." Then I closed the notebook, shut off the lamp, and let the cabin settle into silence, the smell of fresh paint still sharp in the air. I woke the next morning to the sound of my phone buzzing nonstop. Text after text, missed calls stacked on the screen. All from Mom, all from Megan. Something was brewing. Before I could decide whether to answer, an email alert popped up. Attached was a legal notice. Megan had hired her own attorney and was preparing to file for equitable division of family assets. My jaw clenched. She was making her move. I called Robert Chen right away. He answered on the first ring. "I've been expecting this," he said calmly. "Your sister retained counsel last night. They're alleging that your inheritance is unfair and that you coerced your father." "That's insane," I snapped. Dad prepared everything months before he passed. It was airtight. Robert's tone was steady. "It is airtight, but lawsuits aren't always about winning. They're about wearing you down. Megan knows if she drags this out, it'll cost time and money. She's betting you'll cave." "She doesn't know me very well," I muttered. Robert chuckled softly. "That's the spirit. I'll file the first response today. Don't engage with her directly, only through counsel." But Megan didn't give a damn about legal advice. She called me an hour later, her voice dripping with mock concern. Hannah, why are you making this harder? You know the cabin should be shared. Dad never meant to cut me out. Funny, I said. His signature on every legal document says otherwise. You think you're clever, hiding behind some lawyer. But courts look at fairness. And when I explain how you've manipulated Mom, how you abandoned family for the army, how you're unstable from deployments, I cut her off, voice sharp. Be very careful, Megan. She paused, then sneered. That cabin won't save you. You'll lose everything. I hung up, blood boiling. She was trying to twist my service into a weakness, like sacrifice was something to be ashamed of. That afternoon, Jack came by with his usual timing, like he could smell trouble from 2 cabins away. He found me pacing the porch. Let me guess, he said. Your sister's lawyering up? Faster than I thought. He leaned against the railing. That's how bullies operate. Come in hard, loud, make you think they're bigger than they are. I'm not folding. Good, he said, but watch your 6. People like Megan don't fight clean. He wasn't wrong. 2 days later, a reporter from a local paper showed up at the driveway. Captain Whitmore? She asked, notebook in hand. We heard there's a family dispute over the Whitmore estate. Your sister claims you're refusing to share valuable property. Care to comment? I clenched my jaw. Megan was already spinning this in the press. No comment, I said, walking past her. She scribbled anyway, probably thrilled to have been brushed off. By evening, the article was online. Family rift over Whitmore cabin. Sister says soldier unfairly controls assets. Ow. The comment section was full of strangers debating my character like they knew me. Some praised my service, others sided with Megan, parroting her lines about fairness. I shut the laptop hard and gripped the edge of the table. Jack stopped by again, dropping off groceries he claimed he had too much of. He noticed my clenched fists. What's she done now? Fed lies to the press. He scratched his beard. Let her talk. You've got proof. She's got noise. Truth takes longer, but it sticks harder. I exhaled slowly. Easier said than done. Everything worth doing is, he said. Later that night, my phone buzzed with another message, this time from Mom. Hannah, can't you just work with your sister? This is tearing us apart. I typed a reply, then erased it. I couldn't stomach another fight with her. She'd already chosen Megan's side, whether she admitted it or not. Instead, I opened Dad's letter again, reading the lines about resilience, about using the land to build something meaningful. His words steadied me more than anything else could. The following morning, Robert called with an update. Megan's lawyer has filed preliminary paperwork. Nothing that sticks, but they're signaling they want to fight. I've fought tougher battles, I told him. I know, he said. And this time, you've got the law on your side. Action. After we hung up, I laced up my boots and walked the property line. Every tree, every patch of soil felt heavier now. This wasn't just land. It was proof. It was the line Dad drew between Megan's greed and my responsibility. When I circled back to the cabin, I found Jack sitting on the porch steps. He looked up at me. You ready for this? I met his eyes. I've been ready my whole life. The decision came to me as clear as any mission order. I wasn't going to hide behind lawyers forever. If Megan wanted to fight, she could look me in the eye and take her best shot. And Mom? She needed to see which daughter actually stood on solid ground. So I called them both and said, dinner at the cabin, tomorrow night, 7 sharp. Mom hesitated. Is this wise, Hannah? Megan wants answers. I'll give her some. The line was quiet. Then Megan's voice cut in from the background, smug as ever. Fine. We'll be there. The next day, I cleaned the place like it was inspection day on base. I laid out Dad's documents in neat piles on the kitchen counter. The deed, the surveys, the mineral reports, all with Robert Chen's notarizations. Proof stacked higher than Megan's ego. Then I cooked. Not because I cared what Megan thought of my cooking, but because Dad would have wanted his table full, not empty. A pot roast, potatoes, bread from the bakery in town. By 6:30, the cabin smelled like a real home. At exactly 7, headlights cut across the trees. Megan's white Lexus crunched up the drive, Mom in the passenger seat. I watched from the porch as Megan strutted toward the door, heels clicking on gravel, cream-colored dress like she was attending a business closing. Mom followed, looking tired but polished. her pearls as rigid as ever. "Nice little place," Megan said as she stepped inside, eyes scanning every corner like a buyer on a house tour. "Still drafty?" I ignored the jab. "Sit down. Dinner's ready." We ate in tense silence at first. Mom tried small talk about the weather, about Albany traffic, but it fell flat. Megan was too busy looking around, cataloging furniture, staring at the old photo of Dad and Grandma Rose on the mantel. Finally, she leaned back in her chair, smirking. "So, what's the big plan, Hannah? Going to tell us you painted the porch and now you're queen of the Adirondacks?" I set my fork down calmly. "I'm going to tell you the truth. The truth Dad left for me, not for you." Her smirk faltered slightly, but she recovered fast. "Enlighten us." I stood, walked to the counter, and brought the metal box to the table. Slowly, deliberately, I placed the geological survey in front of her. "Read it." She snatched it up, eyes flicking across the page. Her confident smile slipped. "This says..." She stopped, cleared her throat, tried again. "This says there are lithium deposits under this property worth tens of millions?" "That's right," I said. "And Dad made me the sole owner. He trusted me with this, not you, not Mom, me." The silence that followed was so thick I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. Mom looked stricken, her hands twisting in her lap. Megan's face flushed red, anger boiling through her mask. "You're lying," she spat. "You forged this." I slid the notarized deed across the table. "Try again." "In." She skimmed it, hands trembling, then shoved it back. "You can't do this. This isn't just yours, it's family property." "It was Dad's property," I said evenly. "And he gave it to me. He knew what you'd do if you got your hands on it. Sell it to the highest bidder. Tear apart the land he and Rose swore to protect." Megan slammed her palm on the table. "You don't get it. This money could change everything, our lives, our children's lives. And you're wasting it on some charity fantasy?" I leaned forward, voice low and steady. "Not a fantasy. A foundation. The Whitmore Veterans and Women Foundation. This land will build something lasting. Something that helps people instead of lining your pockets." Mom gasped softly. "A foundation?" I looked at her. "Yes. Housing, training, support for veterans and women left behind by families like ours. Dad believed in it. He prepared for it. And I'm making it real." Megan's laugh was sharp, almost manic. "You're insane. Giving away millions to strangers when your own family needs it?" I locked eyes with her. "Family? The one who mocked me as a stinking woman? The one who kicked me out of Mom's house like I was nothing? That family?" Her jaw tightened. For once, she hadn't a quick comeback. I turned to Mom. "And you sat silent. You let her treat me like garbage. And now you're shocked Dad trusted me more? Respect goes both ways, Mom. You can't demand it when you've never given it." Tears welled in her eyes. "Hannah, Her voice broke. But Megan wasn't done. She shot to her feet, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You won't get away with this. I'll contest every document, every survey. I'll drag you through court until you're broke and begging." I stood too, meeting her glare head on. "Try me. Dad's lawyer anticipated every move you'd make. The paperwork is locked tight. You'll lose, Megan. And you'll waste every dollar trying." The air crackled with fury. Mom sat frozen, caught between us. Finally, Megan grabbed her purse. "This isn't over," she hissed, storming toward the door. I didn't stop her. Mom lingered, looking at me with tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't realize," she whispered. "I didn't know what your father planned." "You didn't want to know," I said softly. "Because it was easier to believe Megan deserved everything. But Dad saw me. He saw what you refused to see." She covered her mouth, then hurried after Megan, leaving the cabin quiet again. I stood there, staring at the table littered with proof Dad's handwriting, notarized deeds, surveys worth millions. For once, Megan's words hadn't rattled me. She could scream, threaten, hire lawyers, but the truth sat right here in black and white. And no one, not her, not even Mom, could take it away. The cabin door had barely shut when the silence settled heavy around me. The roast sat half-eaten on the table, steam fading, the air still thick with the echo of Megan's threats. I gathered the papers, stacking them neatly back into Dad's metal box, then slid it beneath the floorboard. It wasn't fear that drove me to hide it again, it was ritual, proof that I held the line. The next morning, I brewed coffee strong enough to scrape paint. My phone buzzed with a flood of alerts. Megan's attorney had filed the contest formally. But Robert Chen's email followed right after. No grounds, I'll crush this before it gets traction. His calm words steadied me. Still, I knew Megan wouldn't stop screaming just because the law shut her down. By noon, word had reached the local paper again. This time, the story wasn't flattering to her. A leak from the courthouse confirmed Dad's will had been airtight, that her filings were little more than tantrums dressed up in legal language. The article quoted an unnamed source. The younger Whitmore daughter is wasting her time. The cabin and mineral rights belong entirely to Captain Hannah Whitmore. I read it twice, then set the phone down, exhaling. For once, the truth was louder than Megan's spin. That evening, headlights flashed in the driveway again. I braced myself. But it wasn't Megan, it was Mom. She stepped out slowly. No pearls this time. Just a simple sweater and slacks. She looked smaller, like the weight of everything had finally settled. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I opened the door and stepped aside. She walked in, eyes sweeping the room like she was seeing it for the first time. "It looks alive again," she said, touching the freshly painted doorframe. I poured her tea, set it on the table. For a long while, she said nothing, just stared at her hands wrapped around the mug. Finally, she whispered, "I've been wrong. I didn't speak." He let her keep going. "I let Megan convince me you were selfish, that your service was just running away, that this cabin was worthless. But last night, seeing those documents, hearing your father's words, I realized he trusted you more than I ever did." Her eyes filled, and that broke me. I swallowed hard. "You didn't defend me when she humiliated me. You chose silence." Her tears spilled over. "I know, and I can't undo it. But I want to be better now, Hannah, if you'll let me. I'm section." For the first time in years, I saw not the stern matriarch but a woman carrying her own regrets. I nodded slowly. "I'll let you, but it won't be easy." She nodded back. "I don't expect easy." The next day, Megan struck again, this time in person. She stormed onto the property without warning, heels sinking in the dirt, her voice carrying before she even reached the porch. "You think you've won?" she shouted. "That article is trash. I'll appeal. I'll drag your name through every court until you choke on legal fees." I stepped outside, meeting her at the edge of the porch. "You're wasting your breath, Megan. The law isn't on your side. The press isn't on your side. Even Mom's not on your side anymore." Her face twisted. "Mom?" Right on cue, Mom appeared in the doorway. "Megan," she said firmly. "Enough. I've watched you tear this family apart. Your father's wishes were clear, and I won't stand in the way of them anymore. End of Ixodo." Megan's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious. You're choosing her, after everything I've done for you?" Mom's voice cracked, but she didn't waver. "You've done plenty, Megan, but none of it was for anyone but yourself." The color drained from Megan's face. For once, her words failed her. She spun on her heel, storming back toward her Lexus. "Fine," she spat. "Rot in your shack. Don't come crying to me when you realize you've thrown away everything." End quote. The tires screeched as she sped off, leaving only the bitter taste of exhaust in the air. I stood there, heart pounding, not from fear but from the finality of it. Megan had lost not just in court, not just in the papers, but in the one place she thought she'd never lose, Mom's allegiance. Inside, Mom sat down at the table, wiping her cheeks. "She'll never forgive me," she whispered. "She doesn't need to," I said quietly. "What matters is that you finally saw the truth." And that night, I wrote the final draft of my foundation proposal, polished and ready. I attached the legal documents, the mineral valuations, everything Robert had confirmed. Then I hit send to a list of potential partners and veteran organizations. It was no longer an idea in a notebook. It was real. When I closed the laptop, I looked around the cabin. Fresh paint, sturdy boards, Dad's letter framed on the mantel, The place wasn't just mine, it was ours. His, Grandma Rose's, every soldier who would one day find a second chance here. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was clinging to something to keep it from being stolen. I felt like I was building something too big to be taken away. And Megan? She could stew in her bitterness as long as she wanted. I wasn't fighting her anymore. I was fighting for something bigger. The ribbon fluttered in the breeze as I tightened it one last time across the entryway of the new building. Months of planning, late nights, and endless paperwork had finally brought me here. The Whitmore Veterans and Women Foundation was no longer just an idea in my head or lines in Dad's letter. It stood solid on a piece of land where greed had once tried to plant its flag. Reporters milled about, photographers snapping shots of the bright red ribbons stretched across the glass doors. Volunteers bustled inside, arranging chairs and setting out trays of food. Outside, a group of veterans in uniform jackets chatted with young mothers holding toddlers. It was exactly the kind of mix I'd dreamed about. Soldiers looking for a second mission, women rebuilding their lives, families with nowhere else to go finally stepping into a place designed for them. Jack strolled up in his usual jeans and worn-out Marine Corps cap, carrying a coffee like he owned the place. "Looks good, Captain," he said, scanning the crowd. "Never thought I'd see this much action in sleepy upstate New York." "Neither did I admitted, smoothing the front of my blazer. I wasn't wearing fatigues today, but somehow this felt like the most important uniform I'd ever put on. "Your dad would be proud," Jack added. His voice was steady, but I caught the tightness in his throat. "Yeah," I said softly. "I think so too." And the mayor of Albany arrived next, all polished smiles and firm handshakes, followed by local officials who suddenly cared a lot about community support. They lined up for the photo ops, but I didn't mind. Their presence meant the foundation had traction, and traction meant survival. When it was time, I stepped to the podium. The crowd hushed. My eyes caught on Mom in the front row. She was sitting straighter than I'd seen her in years, hands clasped tight in her lap. She hadn't missed a single planning meeting since that night Megan stormed away. It wasn't forgiveness for the past, not entirely, but it was proof of change. I took a breath and began. "This land was supposed to be forgotten," I said. "An old cabin, a piece of property, no one cared about. Some people even mocked it, mocked me. They thought it was worthless. But what they didn't see, what they refused to see, was what was hidden underneath." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I kept my voice calm, steady. My father and grandmother believed this land could carry something bigger than wealth, and today, that belief becomes real. This foundation will provide housing, training, and support for veterans and women who've been abandoned, overlooked, or cast aside, because nobody should be told they don't matter. Nobody should be treated like a burden. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was loud, raw, the kind of clapping that came from people who actually believed what they were hearing. I gripped the podium tighter, letting the sound wash over me. When it quieted, I added, "This isn't revenge. Not really. Success is the only answer worth giving to those who tried to tear you down. And standing here opening these doors, I think we've answered them loud enough." The ribbon was cut. Cameras flashed. People surged inside, their voices echoing in the halls. For the first time since Dad's funeral, I felt like I could breathe without a weight on my chest. After the ceremony, I slipped away to the lake dock, needing a moment alone. The water shimmered under the afternoon sun, just as it had the first night I'd arrived at the cabin, broken and unwanted. Except now, everything had shifted. The dock was repaired, the land alive with possibility, and I was no longer standing there wondering if I'd survive. I was standing there knowing I'd built something no one could take. Mom walked up quietly, joining me at the edge. She slipped her arm through mine. "I was wrong about you," she said. Her voice cracked but held firm. "And I see it now. All of it. I'm proud of you, Hannah." I nodded, throat tight. "That means more than you know." Behind us, the building buzzed with laughter and conversation. Veterans swapping stories. Kids playing in the courtyard. Women signing up for programs. It was messy and loud and imperfect, exactly the kind of future Dad and Grandma Rose had imagined. Megan didn't show, of course. I hadn't expected her to. The last I'd heard, she'd sold her Miami condo share and was trying to claw her way into another real estate project. always chasing the next dollar, never catching the point. But in a way, her absence was its own confirmation. She hadn't won. She never would. I pulled Dad's ring from my pocket and slipped it onto my finger. The emerald caught the sunlight, a green spark against the blue of the lake. "To you, Dad," I whispered. "We won. In our way." The wind carried the words across the water, scattering them like seeds. I didn't need to say more. Because sometimes the sharpest revenge isn't shouting down the people who mocked you. It's standing taller than they ever imagined you could, and letting your success answer everything they said. And standing there, with Mom's arm linked in mine, the foundation alive behind us, and the lake stretching wide and steady before me, I knew that answer would echo for the rest of my life. Looking back now, I realized this was never just about land or money. It was about respect, about proving that family revenge stories don't have to be fueled by screaming matches or lawsuits. Sometimes the strongest revenge stories are written in silence through building, through choosing dignity over destruction. My sister mocked me, tried to tear me down, but family drama only has the power you allow it to. I refused to give her mine. What started as an insult over a worthless cabin became the foundation for something that will outlast every bitter word she ever threw my way. And that's the truth about real revenge. You don't just survive, you rise higher than they ever expected.